Hey everyone, and welcome to a special interview on AGT Time. Cody Patterson here, along with.
Along with Jay Bach and our special guest, Bandaloni. I don't,
Yay!
in fact, I don't even know.
In the
Do you
house.
prefer to go by Bandaloni or do you prefer to go by your Christian name?
No, that's fine. Bandaloni's cool. Most of my pals call me Bandaloni.
All right, we'll roll with Bandaloni then. I love it.
Sure, that's
Uh,
cool.
so I want to kind of give you a little bit of background information here, and hopefully I don't weird you out too much with sort of telling the story. Uh, for our podcast listeners, this is the maybe third or fourth time I've already told this story, so I'm going to tell it for you now. Um, when I was
All
in
right.
college, a junior in college, I was building a one-man band for our annual talent show, and
Right.
this was back in 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
I was, digging through the internet looking for whatever pictures I could, whatever images to try and
Sure.
get ideas, right? To
Sure.
help me build my rig. And I came across your website and you had, not on purpose, but some of the best pictures of the rig that I could say like, okay, so this is kind of how he's got that working. This is how that works.
Mm-hmm.
You have the bass drum flat against your back instead of sort of the Dick Van Dyke style that
That's right.
is turned 90 degrees.
Better
And so,
organized.
like I kind of took all this into my accounts, and I was kept going back to the Bandaloni website over and over, and then years later, I'm graduated from. I did, by the way, win the talent show. So thank you
Woo-hoo.
for the help.
The
uh,
inspiration.
the inspiration. You inspired me, believe it or not. So years later, my wife and I were looking through the newspaper before the Iowa State Fair started, and she said, "Oh, hey, there's going to be a one-man band at the state fair." And I said, "Oh yeah, who's that?" She said, "Bandaloni." And I said, "Bandaloni?" She's like, "You don't know who that is." I was like, "Gosh, right? Yes, I do." So I was thrilled to get to meet you at the state fair. I think that was the first year that you were there,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and you've been going back pretty consistently since then. Is that right?
I have been. I've been back every year with the exception of one. I took a break. Um, and another one this past year, not by choice. Yeah, I've become a kind of a staple there and a family member.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
Well,
love
I'm
it.
glad you feel that way.
Yeah, it's a good gig. Good
So
people there.
let's talk maybe kind of reverse chronological order here. Like, how
Sure.
are things going here in 2021? And as we're kind of feeling our way through the pandemic here, like,
Mhm.
are you staying busy? Are you what's a day in the life of Bandaloni look like these days?
I'm a songwriter. My background's actually visual art. I'm actually a sculptor by training and education.
Okay,
I'm also a pretty decent chef too. I owned a cafe up until about a year and a half ago.
no kidding.
So I've got lots of irons in the fire. This past year, I've been spending a lot of time just trying to become a better human being. I mean, I hope all of us have tried to at least do that much. Um, so I spend a lot of my time writing songs. I've been teaching myself some new instruments until I got tennis elbow just from playing too much. I've been teaching myself accordion and fiddle and mandolin, and yeah, just kind of keeping busy, man. Writing songs, making art, hiking, cooking,
That's
making love. You know.
That's
Woo.
great to hear. I hear, so many people in sort of the gig economy I worry about. And, especially on a year like this where, your normal income streams are disrupted. I'm glad to hear that you're staying busy and you've got plenty of things going on to keep you alive.
That's right.
Okay, so you mentioned mandolin, accordion, a couple other instruments. Like, where did your love of instruments come from?
Uh, that's an interesting story. I'm the youngest of five kids, and
Okay.
I'm the only one in my family that was never given music lessons,
Oh,
and everyone else was given music lessons. My sister was on piano. I had a brother on drums, another brother on guitar, and another one on accordion. And no one pursued music after that. And all these instruments were laying around, and I decided to start picking them up and sort of fiddling on them. So that was kind of the start. And I'm the only one that ever pursued music as a career.
okay.
What, whatever that says. Yeah, so that's kind of my start. As far as getting into the one man band, that was a different tact altogether.
So yeah, I guess kind of tell us a little bit about how the one man band started then, how uh, it went from an idea to reality, and then ultimately I want that to lead into how did you end up on America's Got Talent?
Yeah, so the long and short of it is, when I graduated from high school, I landed a job with my art school teacher's husband selling high-end audio equipment. So I learned how to I got kind of thrown in and immersed in the life of a salesman. And then I went off to university and studied art and sculpture and learned how to make a lot of stuff with my hands. And with the music background and the sculpture background and the sales background, I was able to combine all those skills. And as I like to say, I was able to build it, play it, and sell it. That's kind of the three magical ingredients to becoming a successful one man band. I think and Jay, I'm sure that you can appreciate this. There's a lot of repairs and mechanics that go on behind the scenes. I may make it look easy out front, but I spend a lot of time fixing equipment and redesigning and doing a lot of soldering and electrical repairs.
Okay.
So there's a lot of skills required in regards to that. So I was inspired by a one-man band that actually moved in beside me out in Calgary, Alberta, many years ago, and yeah, I just decided to. I actually had this old kick drum sitting on my back deck, and I'm not a drummer. I've never really played drums, but I had this old kick drum, and I used to use it as a cooler in the summertime for beer. I would just fill this drum with ice and fill it with beer, and and then when it came time to build my one man band, I started looking at this thing going, hey, wow, I already have a kick drum. So I dumped out the ice and the beer and cut it down and attached some things. And that was the beginning of it all.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I know, like, when I was building mine, or when I was kind of starting to think about it, I was like,
Sure.
well, if I ever find a cheap bass drum like that,
Right.
yeah, I'm a poor college kid. I don't have money to go spending on actually building this thing. So,
Well, of course.
I happened along a bass drum at Goodwill one day, and was like, all right, well,
There it is.
there's the foundation. This puppy's going to happen. So,
That's awesome.
um, so you built your original rig. Were you out of university at this time?
Yeah, I was out of university, and I was actually, gosh, what was I doing at the time? I was building dinosaurs for museums, large scale dinosaurs for museums with my sculpture background.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
and you know what, man, that's a really dirty job because your hands are immersed in in all sorts of nasty chemicals, and you're breathing silicon dust from grinding fiberglass all day, and your hands are in acetone cleaning them up, and yeah, so I kind of pivoted from that career into a healthier one, which was the one man band. And if you think about it, the one man band is actually it's a pretty decent workout, as I'm sure you know. So I look at it as you normally do 3 shows a day, so I look at it as in regards to the 3 cardio workouts a day that I get paid for. So
Yeah, yeah. It really does work you out. And the thing that I've noticed
it does.
is when you're running the bass drum and the hi hat, at least the way that I have mine set up, like you're pulling on that weight as well. So you've got the not
Right.
just the weight of the rig, but pulling on the weight of the rig as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the rig, though, and a lot of people see me bent over while I'm performing, and they think that it's very uncomfortable. However, it really isn't, because those nylon straps that I have attached to the back of my ankles, I actually provide tension. So it's almost like someone holding onto your shoulders and holding you up as you're leaning
Oh,
over. So there
So you're
are
not
so
you're
it,
so you're not putting any extra stress on your back.
that's right. Yeah, it,
Yeah.
it, it looks a lot more uncomfortable than it really is.
Yeah.
Having said that, it's still a hell of a workout, and there's still a lot of energy that you put into a show for sure.
okay. So when did you like your original performances? When did you start actually playing publicly as a one-man band?
Okay, so here's the long and short of that. So I built this rig out of this old beer cooler I had on my deck, and I bought a camper van, and I rehearsed a few songs in my bedroom at the time, and I just hit the road for 5 months. I got in this camper van and threw my gear in there, and I just drove across the country and uh, played everything from farmers markets to waterfronts. I crashed in a couple of festivals, and it was a joy. It was a real incredible. I mean, imagine being in your mid 30s and you pack everything in and decide that you're going to become a one man band, and that was that was throwing caution to the wind and throwing whatever career I had at the time out the window and completely pivoting and taking on a new one.
That's, I'm sure like the memories of that are like quite the adventure. You said you kept a journal and you checked back on that periodically.
Yeah, just to reflect on on the beginnings and the wonderful people that I got to meet and the times that I had. And honestly, when I built that rig and decided to become a one man band, the whole impetus and my idea was to never really reach any destination. It was more. I realized very quickly that it was a work in progress, and it always would be, and it would be an adventure the whole time, and it has been, and it hasn't stopped being an adventure in whatever shape or form. It tends to reinvent itself, and the experiences tend to change, and the pandemic is a really good example of that. It's the law of impermanence. Nothing ever remains the same, and things are in constant flux and change. And uh, I don't know, the one man band has been willing to adapt and kind of go with the flow with all of that. So that's
That's
been
a
kind of cool.
that's a great
And it
philosophy.
landed me on America's Got Talent. What?
Yeah.
That was another little, segue. It was another like, what? Wow, here we go.
So tell us then how you went from the nomadic one-man band to ending up on America's Got Talent. Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? What happened there?
They actually No, they actually reached out to me. I think, like yourself, they were, this was the first season, of course, that I was on. So, um, they were perusing the internet and looking for wacky acts, and they came across mine. And if you recall back in the day, and I'm sure it's still the same now, I haven't looked into the any what credentials you need to get on the show now, but they were looking for audition videotapes from people, but because they had realized that I had been doing it for some time and I had video already posted on my website, and I had a good track record of gigs under my belt, they waived that for me and essentially just invited me on. So that was a real bonus.
Yeah. Now, were you aware that you were going to be in the weird and wacky category and not like on the main show?
Yeah, kind of. They kind of gave me a heads up, and that was okay with me. I mean, it was NBC. It was prime time. It was on a Saturday night. You know, of course, there's a saying in the biz. Oh, come on, get on there, do it for the exposure. And my usual rebuttal to that is people can die from exposure. So I'm always reluctant to jump on anything that has that or that's kind of promoting that. However, I realize that to get your own minute and a half on NBC primetime on a Saturday night, that's pretty darn good exposure.
Pretty
You
good
know what I mean?
exposure.
And yeah, I was quite chuffed, and I knew I was going to be part of this wacky group, and that was okay with me. They were wonderful people. It was a wonderful time. It really was. It was a fantastic experience. It was
Do
first class
you
all around.
do you stay in contact with any of those acts that you met, or was it sort of a flash in the pan?
You know what? I never did. However, there was one fellow that it was actually the guy that won in our wacky group that moved on, and it's been so long. His name has escaped me now, but him and I actually became pretty chummy during that show, and we hung out at the hotel and had drinks in the hot tub and dinner together. My wife and him and his wife, and we shared a similar background. He's actually a sculptor in California as well, and he did some really cool art. So, we were just kind of like two peas in a pod. We were both musicians. We were both sculptors, and yeah, so we hung out. And afterwards, we kind of, we stayed in contact briefly, but just over time, you kind of you fall out, things move on, and that was cool. But he was really cool, and yeah,
Were
that was neat.
you were you able to use your exposure for good? Did that lead to any future gigs, future were you
Um,
noticed on the street?
no, well, you know what? As I like to say, it kind of raised my stock value a bit. Um, but in terms of uh, it's very difficult in the entertainment industry to become a household name, as you are aware. And it takes years, and it takes a lot of devotion, and it takes a lot of exposure. So, but I have been able to use that, as I said, I guess as a bit of a calling card. I'm a bit of a humble guy, though. I don't go around boasting about it, unless the opportunity provides itself for me to mention that to somebody if I know it will open a door, and it normally does. And
Yeah.
I never abused that privilege. I think it was a real privilege to be on the show, and yeah, it just another feather in my cap, and it's another thing that happened along the adventure of the one man band, and many things have happened since. And here's an interesting story through my one man band and people that I've met. I just had Alice Cooper record a song that I co-wrote that was just released this past month, and it's on a
That's
Wow.
children's album.
fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So like there's just weird little things like that have come out of this whole story of my one man band, and there's tens of thousands of other little stories like that along the way, but that's been kind of one of the latest kind of really big things that's kind of happened through this whole thing.
That's great. So you mentioned you write music. You wrote this song that was it written for Alice Cooper? Or was it written for children, and Alice Cooper's the one that picked it up, or what's the story there?
No, it was actually written for Alice Cooper. My best friend up here is who I met through being a one man band. We met actually out on the fair circuit many years ago, and we became fast friends, and we've been incredibly close ever since. And he's become a very successful children's entertainer in Canada, in a group called Splash and Boots. And he's him and his partner just a couple of years ago were picked up by Bob Ezrin and another manager. I don't know if you know who Bob Ezrin is, but he was basically the producer that was responsible for bands like Kiss. He was responsible for Alice Cooper's success, as well as he produced The Wall by Pink Floyd.
Oh wow.
And so it's interesting. So I was at the Juno Awards in Canada here about 4 years ago, and I was at the table, and somebody had announced on the stage that Bob Ezrin was in the crowd, and I just flipped my wheels. I had known about Bob Ezrin since I was 12 years old, and I was a big Kiss fan. That was the first concert I went to as a kid. So I was pretty thrilled to get up and chase him down after the lights came up, and got a picture with him. I got to meet him. But lo and behold, my buddy Nick, who's a little younger than I am, he had no idea who Bob Ezrin was. Well, fast forward 3 years later, Bob Ezrin's contacting them saying, "Hey, I really love what you guys are doing. I'm looking for a different project." So as the story goes, he was down recording just last January, in Arizona, recording Alice's latest disc or disc. God, that's ancient. Alice was recording his latest. I think you can still call them albums. He was recording his latest release called Detroit Songs or Detroit Bands. I can't remember the name of it, but that was just dropped recently. But anyways, Bob Ezrin called from Arizona and said, "Hey, I'm down here with Alice, and how about you write a song, and he'll record it." And my buddy Nick was like, "Yeah, okay," and he freaked out and called me up immediately. It was like, "Holy cow! I just got a call from Bob Ezrin. He wants me to write a song for Alice Cooper." And I just happened to be heading into the city at that point, and I said, "Hey, man, I'll help you out." So we did. We actually knocked it out in a day and a half, and we knocked out the rough recording and the vocal track and sent it down to Alice. And within 2 days, he had the vocal track on it, and it was back up, and then the song was completed up in Canada.
Sweet.
And it was just released, and it was just nominated for a Juno Award in Canada, which is the equivalent of the Grammys in the US.
Kidding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm pretty excited about that. So I may see a Juno Award on my mantelpiece in May.
That'd be fantastic. Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty
Good
cool.
luck.
Right? Thanks.
I'd vote for you. Haven't heard the song, but
Oh, it's called Heart Parade. So here's something, you can find it on Spotify. It's called Heart Parade.
Heart Parade.
Heart Parade, and it's by
Okay.
Splash and Boots, but it features
Splash and
Alice
Boots.
Cooper. Yeah.
Oh man. So like, will you see royalties from that? Like, I'm assuming that there's some sort of
Yeah, there's a system in place, but you know what? I will get credit I'll get half songwriting credit for that. But whether that sort of translates into any money, I honestly, it hasn't even crossed my mind. It may not. I don't care, really. I think it was one of those exposure things. Like, you know what I'm saying? Oh, Alice Cooper wants to, record one of your songs. Well, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Fair
of
enough,
course, yes, here, yeah, I'll write a song for Alice Cooper.
Very cool.
So we'll see. That remains to be seen. I'm just really thrilled to have co-written a song for one of my childhood rock and roll heroes. It's like, what?
Very cool. Very cool. So I want to kind of turn back a little bit back to your one-man band. Talk about the rig a little bit. You play. You've got the bass drum on your back. You've got the snare drum, I guess, kind of hooked up to the head of your guitar, if I recall. And the hi-hat kind of goes with your other foot. What else do you have kind of going on there that people should be aware of if they ever see you play?
Okay, so my philosophy with the one-man band, it's never been about how many things you can play. It's about how many things you can play and maintain the quality, integrity of the music, and still sound like a full band. So I think compared to some one-man bands, I'm a little bit simpler. However, the simple aesthetic and the simple contraption that I have, I've over time and through a lot of trial and error, I've come up with some really interesting ways to make it sound bigger. For instance, I'm using drum triggers so that I don't have to mic it any longer, which makes the audio much better. And I've also spent a considerable amount of time and energy and money on my sound system, which looks like an old style 1930s cathedral style radio that I've scaled up to be about 5 feet. And I have all rack mount components in it. And I've spent about $25,000-$30,000 just on that sound system alone.
Wow.
To make my one-man band sound as good as it can. So back to the rig itself, I've got a hi-hat and a tambourine and a snare drum with 2 drumsticks that I figured out how to do drum rolls. And I'm going to give a shout out here to Pete Farmer Foot Drums in Northern Michigan. I took a drive up there last year because I was looking to reinvent my rig a little bit and look for some changes. And I knew that he was well along the way of really perfecting, and he'd spent so much time building one-man band contraptions and foot contraptions for one-man bands around the world. He's an incredible mind in the one-man band world. And anyways, I went up there specifically to acquire a little piece of equipment that he had designed and machined himself that I now have on my rig. And what it allows me to do is do drum rolls with just one string.
Oh, wow.
Which is amazing. Now, I don't even think that Pete understood how to do that. He had it rigged up to do two strings, but I'm like, no, I can figure this out and be able to do one string and do drum rolls. So that was a big coup for me. And of course, the kick drum. Oh, what else do I got on there? I've got some other little tricks too that, you may not be able to see, but you can hear them when I'm performing.
So you talked earlier that you're constantly working on it. You're always doing maintenance or changing it up. Do you have just one rig that you use all the time, or do you have different types of rigs for different types of situations? Is your rig interchangeable? How does that work?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. However, it's just one rig that I use. I'm going to try and pick up my computer here. It's right behind me here. So I welded this up out of aluminum. So it's made out of an aluminum frame. You can't see it very well. But it's a very sophisticated piece of equipment. As much as it just looks like a drum, it really isn't. I've welded it up out of aluminum so that you can see all the mechanisms inside. And it's basically a one skin system. It doesn't have a normal shell like a regular drum kit. It just has one skin, and then you can look inside and see all the mechanisms and all the contraption working. Because one thing I've noticed over time is that people will walk by me at a show or at a fair, and they shrug me off as if I'm just playing to backing tracks. And I can't. If I had $1 for everyone that came up to me and said, "Wow, I love your backing tracks. How do you do that?" and they're floored when I say, "Oh no, you misunderstand. This is all 100% live." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." So, and when I hear that, that's a compliment to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because that tells me that I'm doing something right. If they actually think that there's backing tracks happening.
Well, and that's interesting for me to hear sort of your philosophy of the one-man band. The music first philosophy, I think, is different than a lot of people take. Like you said, they're in it for the spectacle, and I'm going to be a lot of noise and something to look at.
Sure.
But I don't know that that's sustainable like yours is, right? If you're going to have a stage show, or you're 3 times a day, you've got to have a lot of material, and you've got to be able to put on a show, not just be something you glance over at for 30 seconds.
That's right. No, you have to wear many hats as a one-man band. You have to be an entertainer, not just a musician, but you have to be an entertainer.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of elements that go into a successful one-man band.
Yeah.
And it was never really lost on me. And the epiphany that I had many years ago, sort of figured out to be sort of a dream that sort of I kind of made happen, because I had this kind of idea that I could do all of these things. I could play sporting events and corporate shows, and I could put custom drum skins on my back for corporations if they wanted to pay me to do that.
Sure.
I went all wireless. I was one of the first one-man bands, I think, to actually go completely wireless. And as technology moves on too, my one-man band grows and changes as well. For instance, back in the day when I started, there wasn't a company around like Line 6, and I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they build they built a series of highly customized guitars. And when that guitar came out, I was thrilled because what it does, it's a modeling guitar, which allows you to quickly flick switches, which gives you different tunings and open tunings. So I can play Rolling Stones songs just by flicking a switch and getting an open G tuning without actually having to change all the machine heads. But on top of that, I also have available to me on that same guitar everything from banjos to a sitar to
Wow.
to acoustic guitars to a mandolin. I have everything from Stratocasters, Telecasters, any guitar that you can think of, a vintage guitar is available just by flicking a switch. And I can also plug that into a computer and customize my own tuning so that I can flick a switch and do any customized tunings. For instance, doing something like Jack White and the White Stripes, Seven Nation Army. That's a completely different tuning. So to be able to actually have that on board on my guitar, flick a switch and be instantly at that tuning without anyone being that much wiser.
Yeah, but
So
that's
as I said,
magic of the
I've
band.
kind of,
Yeah.
it is. And another thing that wasn't available back in the day when I started was harmonizers. So when a harmonizer came out, I was thrilled with that. And the initial harmonizers that were used, you had to physically change the parameter of the harmonizer while you're changing chords on your guitar. But then somebody came up with an algorithm that you didn't have to do that any longer, that you can just run your vocal and your guitar through the harmonizer rack, and I can sing and get 4-part or 6-part or 8-part harmonies on top of my regular voice.
I was going to say that's one of the things. I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like that's one of the most magical parts of when you play is I believe you've got one microphone for just your voice and then another microphone that is your voice and whatever harmonies you choose to add to it. Yeah. And then of course you change the harmonies with the song that you're choosing to sing with to be the correct harmonies.
That's right.
I think that's really, really cool. You know, it's one of those things that you've hidden away inside of your radio that goes on the wagon that you go with.
That's right.
So I guess that's a really cool thing that you do. I haven't seen another one-man band do anything quite like that, or not as well as you do anyhow. So
well, that's the cool thing about one-man bands, in my opinion, is that there's no real book on it, and everyone that's ever created a one-man band, regardless of how you've been inspired or who you look at, it ends up being your own in the end, and you end up doing your own thing in the end, and it becomes kind of a unique thing in itself. And I haven't seen two one-man bands that are the same. Everyone's doing something just a little different.
Is there a community of one-man bands out there? Are you?
Is there like a Facebook group out there?
Yeah,
yeah, it's a 12-step program. We're all in it. No, but the internet provides a world of one-man bands. There's a couple of them in the U.S. that I'm close with, and we go to trade shows and we end up at trade shows together. And even though they're rivals and competitors, we actually have a great deal of respect for one another, and we're all friends, and we're all trying to help each other out. But I'll tell you, if you were to look at all three of us, we're all doing something different, and that's kind of cool, and it's unique, and that's the way it should be. Do your own thing, whatever blows your hair back. Right?
A one-man band that sits down to play, like behind a drum set and plays their guitar and harmonica or whatever. Do you kind of look down your nose at those guys?
Do I? Well, I must say, over time, I've seen a lot of guys and gals. This isn't it's not a gender-specific occupation. There are female bands out there. I don't look down on them. For instance, I mentioned Pete Farmer earlier, the fellow who makes these one-man band contraptions. He makes them for your back as well as the sit-down ones. and his sit down ones are remarkable, and they're actually really great works of art in themselves, and they're very productive and really smart ergonomically how they've been laid out, but they're not like, just a big clumsy drum kit and somebody bashing away and sort of open chords. I still look for the skill, the musician skill, whether you're sitting down or not. I've seen some really unique and really cool and very talented sit down one man bands, and I've seen some really shitty ones too. So, but that you get that anywhere
Yeah.
with any musicians in any music in any genre.
So you talked about other one man banders being competitors. Are there one man band competitions?
Uh, I really don't know, and if there
Okay.
were, I don't know if I would even enter. That's not my, Oh, here's a good example. So there used to be a one man band festival in Montreal, Canada, and uh, but I ran from that, meaning like anytime somebody charges you $50 or $100 to apply for a festival, I'm not going to do that because I think that's really shady kind of way to run a festival. And that only lasted 2 or 3 years. And, one man bands came from different places. But as far as competitions go, one of the one man bands I mentioned that I know from the fair circuit, he actually tried to get a festivals run up and running down in Florida, but I think he realized after a while just the logistics of getting something like that together and a bunch of one man bands. It's quite an undertaking.
That's, yeah, that's
And
tough.
the other thing is, who wants to watch a bunch of one man bands all weekend long?
That guy right there.
That guy right there.
Guilty as
You
charged.
know what? Like
In Florida,
I think
nonetheless, yes.
yeah. Well, you know what? I think, oh God, we're a novelty act. And that's the beauty, that's the nice thing about my show and what I do, I think, and that is people can take in as much as they want and then move along because I'm a strolling act.
Yeah.
And I don't like being on a stage where people are confined and they feel like they need to stick around the whole show because kind of, you see the one man band, you've after you've heard a song or two, you've kind of seen the trick, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So you've really got to be invested in the music and in the comedy and the rest of the show because, as I said, you have to be an entertainer as well. So it's not just a matter of playing songs, but you have to engage people with humor as well as interaction. So I try and engage people as much as possible in my shows as well. But having said that, I am in no way offended when I see someone come in and they take in a song or two and they tip their hat and sort of they're on their way. That's okay. That's okay with me.
That's fantastic, and I think that's the right philosophy as well for what you do. So, well, I'm I'm not out of questions, but I'm out of questions that I think a lot of people really want to listen to on a on the podcast. But if you like, is there anything else that you want to share with us about a one man band? And I also want to give you a chance to plug yourself. How can people support you?
Oh wow. Well, I would say support your local fair. The majority of my shows nowadays, I've really plugged myself into the fair circuit across the continent, and um, I would suggest nowadays, especially during these strange times, that people get out and support their local fairs and festivals because uh, in this gig economy, it's not just the entertainers and the sound people and the food vendors that are hurting. It's the fair themselves that are in dire straits, and some of them are they're not gonna make it through this. So people need to get out locally, support your local fair, and by doing that, you're supporting an industry that is really community oriented and one that is family oriented and one that supports not just the arts and music, but it supports businesses. It's a multi-billion-dollar business and hundreds of years old that we really need to maintain. So that's what I would say. That's how you can support me, by supporting your community.
Well, that's very generous. So I appreciate that, and I like the big picture view. If you're supporting your local festival, your local fair, you're supporting you and everyone else like you who lives off of those gigs. So so that's fantastic. Anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to hear a really cool America's Got Talent story that's never been
Yes,
told?
yes, yes, yes. Oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
we love scoops. We love scoops.
I know you want scoops. Okay. Well, as you know, Regis was the host back in the day in the first season when I was on the show. And as you know, Regis has passed this past year,
Mhm.
which was sad, and I was sad to hear of his passing because Regis was a real gentleman on that show and a true professional. And I'll tell you how professional he was. So I flew down there on a Friday and we got set up, and then on Saturday we had oh no we did a rehearsal on Friday night, and then Saturday we had to do a dress rehearsal, and I was on stage Saturday afternoon, and I was doing my sound check. Um, and there's people up in the lights. This was in Hollywood, so there was light riggers and sound techs and people scurrying around the stage while I'm getting a sound check done. And then all of a sudden I heard this crash, boom, bang. And then somebody yelled, get a medic, get a medic. And I thought someone had fallen, a light rigger had fallen from the lights and had injured themselves. And I was quickly rushed off the stage, and there was a panic and blah, blah, blah. And I was coming off the stage and I said, what happened? And my producer said, Regis fell in the band pit. And I went,
Oh,
what?
Whoa.
Yeah, he had been apparently walking behind me and he fell into the band pit, which was located below the stage. So he literally fell into the drum kit down into the band pit. So my producer said, shh, don't tell anybody. Backstage, you're back in the green room. And I'm like, okay. So fast forward a few hours later, I come back out on stage to do my final dress rehearsal, and Regis is sitting at the side of the stage with ice packs on his legs. And he's got a microphone in his hand. And this was a live show, but I'll have you know, it was live that Saturday night. And so Regis was such a pro. He did the dress rehearsal, and he was in command of the whole thing. He had so many years and so many decades of experience in television that he was telling everyone what to do in a very professional manner. Anyways, that man got up that night on both of his 2 feet, and he did the show, and you wouldn't have known that he had injured himself quite badly. And he was in his 70s at that point too.
yeah.
He was no spring chicken then. So anyways, that's a story that has probably never been told.
That's fantastic. You heard it here first, folks.
That's a great story. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
I may get in trouble with HET for that, but
I don't think Regis is going to come after you, at least.
right. Yeah, bless Regis. He was such a nice man. And you know what? He was, David Hasselhoff was, there's a story too.
Oh, go on. I'm here for this all night long. So
I can't tell you the David Hasselhoff story though, because it involves alcohol. And he's still alive.
Okay. All right. Maybe off the air.
All right. Another time.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, I so much appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, to tell us a little bit about your Got Talent experience, your one-man band experience, your generosity for your time tonight, and for your just love of the fair circuit and that whole industry, and the family friendliness of it all is just everything I love. So you've
Cool.
fantastic stuff. Fantastic stuff. I can't thank you enough.
Hey, well, thanks for inviting me on, and I'm glad I could inspire at least one-man band out there. I've always wondered where my protege was, and there he is.
Well,
Well,
I don't know that I can take that title.
you do know that his Twitter handle is One Man Bander.
I did not know that. Wow.
At One Man
That's
Bander. That's me.
Oh, so here's another quick little story regarding one man bands and being a mentor. There's a young one man band. He's 15 and he's in Spain, and he just thinks I am the one man band god. And so I've been helping him out, getting him up to speed, and he's actually quite good and quite talented. But he's just thrilled. He's building a sound system just like mine. And I've been sending him pictures of my rig in detail so that he can build something similar. He's just a really smart, clever, gung-ho kind of kid that is just really jacked up about becoming a one-man band. So trying to help out where I can.
It's I mean,
wacky one person at a time.
One person at a time. Well, I don't ever play professionally. I've done the one talent show and just a couple other times, you know, a one-off to for this or that thing. It mostly just sits in my storage area. So, but it's something that I think it gives you really like some artistic freedom that working with other people just doesn't do. You can do it the way that you want, the way that exactly the way that you want.
Yeah.
So
and that's kind of the idea, you know. If you don't play well with others, why not play with yourself? What did I just say that?
This is a family friendly podcast, so
one man band, play with yourself.
Play with yourself. Cody, you can edit that up however you need.
And we'll hand that one over to Cody.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, with that, let's kind of give out our social medias, and we'll put a button on this one. You can reach out to me at One Man Bander, although I feel like I'm kind of a poser right now. You can reach Cody Patterson at Cody L. Patterson, and you can reach AGT Time at AGT Time, all on Twitter. Of course, you can Facebook us as well. It's AGT Time Pod. And yeah, if you can't reach us through those ways, you're doing something wrong. So is there any way that people can reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can go to my website, which is bandaloni.com, or even better, go and like my Facebook page. It's Bandaloni something or other. All you got to do is go on punch in Bandaloni and you're apt to come up with me. There's lots of cool stuff in there to look at, and videos and whatnot, but could always use another fan.
All right. So find Bandaloni on Facebook. And
several.
With that, we'll put a button on this one today.
Facebook. I'm on Instagram as well, but pardon me?
I was just about to put a button on it, but
what was that?
Tell us more about Instagram.
Oh, I was going to say I'm on Instagram, but I suck at it and I really don't post on it. So I can only do so much.
So you don't do the TikTok or any of that?
No, it's not my bag. I kind of suck at Facebook already.
So Facebook is the place to find you.
Yeah, Facebook or my website if you want to see cool stuff. And yeah, and you can reach me through there if anybody wanted to reach out.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you so much. Cody, thank you so much for your help in putting all this together. A little bit of a dream come true to get to hang out with you tonight. And, you know, now, the dreams are getting bigger and better. I'm going to have a beer with Bandaloni someday. So,
yay! The best part is you're buying. Woohoo!
It's a deal. It's a deal. All right. Well,
all right, fellas. Nice chatting with you. Thanks for reaching out.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Indeed. All right. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.